All right, guys, some of these guys, it's now time they've been waiting for when it comes to these videos. We got the fighters of the year. Coach Sess, go ahead, start it off. You're gonna break some hearts, or you're gonna lift up some spirits whenever you.
Somebody's going to Disney World.
Yeah, or send me an email.
Well, here's the thing: as far as the fighter to me that has put in work in a lot of ways, a lot of areas, that's Shamik Harvey. He served as a coach, won a championship. He stayed busy, and the ratio of his opponents was a little higher than everybody else. So Shamik Harvey is my fighter of the year. But as far as if I categorize this into champions of the year, I got to go with Jonathan Martin because I like champions that defend. When I see champions defending titles, that wins my heart. When I see champions
Locally,
fighters that are busy, that wins my heart. So I could divide that evenly and say, okay, one guy's my champ of the year and the other guy's my fighter of the year.
There you go. I like it. Mr. Dylan McGrath.
for the men, I wanted, after last year and the conversations we had about people in the UFC, people who are in bare knuckle, I wanted to kind of separate mine into pro and amateur. And, you certainly took a lot of pressure off me just now, Mr. Mad Coach, because I don't like to pick the same things you guys pick. But for me, it was so hard with the pros to pick between Shamik and this other guy. And I thought Shamik did do more. And the thing that separates them is that Shamik was a little more strategic in the fights that he selected for himself. Matchup wise, he set himself up to have highlight finishes. He set himself up to have the things he needs to get to that next level where he already has a teammate waiting for him, putting him a good word, I'm sure, with the right people in Brian Battle. So I think taking the fight against Baby Hulk was incredibly good, a good move. It's the biggest name you could fight in the region in a very hard weight class to make a splash in, a very hard weight class to make a name in. On a national level, let alone a local level, where there's just not a lot of fights waiting for you out there at a very high level professionally. So, Shamik, very close, pretty much my runner-up now. He was my number one. Truckin' Carson, the Carolina game dog. He did not, you don't have to win all your fights to be my fighter of the year, but you do have to have something going for you. And the one thing that Truckin' has going for him in spades is he has so much personality. I don't want to necessarily say charisma, because charisma almost implies that it's like something that he's doing. Mm-hmm. He's just being himself, and it's like the nicest guy. The bell rings, rabid attack dog. The bell rings again, and the nicest guy in the world is back. 10 seconds later, the finishes that he was able to put together in that little string of Fight For It main events. I think he main evented more Fight For It's than anyone this year. As far as representing the Carolinas and what I wish, people could know about us, that's a guy who not a lot of people know about, who I think represents us extremely well, not only as a gentleman, but his fighting style is about as entertaining as the day is long. And if somebody's going to go, what do Carolina fighters fight like? If they see this guy fighting, they see a truck on Carson, they go, I don't want to fight those guys, so I'm going to go with the game dog. For the pros, for the amateurs, Mr. Jacob Pius. I have to go with Jacob just because he turned it around for me completely. I didn't have a very high opinion of him at the beginning of the year, skill-wise, personality-wise, team-wise, anything. And in the fights leading up to D, I saw an evolution in the cage. And for me, the guys that endear themselves to me are the guys that grow fight to fight and show me that they're growing. And Jacob started as a guy who didn't know martial arts, but could fight. Now he's a guy who doesn't know a lot of martial arts, but he's training with martial artists, and he can definitely fight. And that's what really goes a long way, right? And when he got hurt, he got the kind of injury that a lot of people would be so, just seeing it grossed me out, made me not want to train for a couple days. He's got the kind of injury that a lot of people don't, come back from very quickly, just in terms of the recovery time. He recovered way too fast, definitely fought on a shoulder or an elbow that wasn't fully healed, and he conducted himself very well. And more importantly, that front kick that I mentioned in the D. Reddick fight, that moment where I said, I think Jacob's got a pathway back into this fight, and it's from that front kick. That's his best kick. The next fight against Kirkpatrick, every time Jacob Pies throws a front kick when you're watching that fight take a shot, you will be sloshed by the end of it because he was sending those to the body so hard that Kirkpatrick didn't even want to be on the feet with him anymore and wanted to dive right into the A game. Little did we know, I was super ready for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that just in terms of the sheer skill come up that I saw from him, the activity level, and the fact that he has some kind of identity, he has some kind of brand, he has some kind of gimmick, that makes him stand out in my mind. So for the amateurs, like I said, could have been Deuce, could have been Sebastian. Both those guys were super impressive this year. But I'm going to go with them.
I don't have any picks, but I will say, especially when it comes to trucking, Carson, and you talk about, he doesn't have to win every fight, but he went to Canada to take a fight. That's impressive to me. And not only is it him, it's now his brother Paulie, who was fighting, I think, mostly in Virginia and Tennessee. And I was like, when are we going to actually see Paulie in North
We saw
Carolina?
him.
And
We saw him all right.
yeah, two times, 2 wins, fairly quick wins.
One of them against Josh Doster, who has ever since then looked like Homelander in the cage. So, I'm very impressed with Paul as well. And I think, Seth, you had a great point on your show when you were talking about one of the things that makes those guys special is how different they are from each other. Jacob and Drew, they're very different fighters, but they're kind of personality-wise, they're sort of more similar. Jacob's definitely a little bit more brash, but those two guys couldn't be more different. And their fighting styles couldn't be more different, but they are that's what makes them cool and interesting to talk about as fighters, or that's one of the things that makes them interesting to talk about as fighters.
Yeah. As far as trucking goes, I don't know if this was a category for you, but it was just one for me, was the finish of the year. Again, he's got less experience than Saraceno, and yet he's able to go in and finish this guy off, which is bananas. And so as far as finish of the year, I definitely had trucking as that.
That'd be the case as well. When especially impressive when you consider off the fact that he was coming off of another, 20-second sub KO or finish. When you're up against a guy like that, most of the time you're going to be so cautious and so shelled up defensively, especially a guy like Saraceno, a veteran. He's not going to just go out there winging punches, and he didn't. Trucking was just super calculated, laser accurate with that body shot, and it all set it up for the knee.
Yeah. Who do you have as the ladies' female fighter of the year? I'll start with you, Dylan.
It was hard for me up until I listened to Words with a Mad Coach, and I found out what his pick for the show was going to be. That took a lot of pressure off me once again. As far as the amateurs go, it was, there's not a ton of women who are competing right now from the North Carolina, South Carolina area, but there is one woman above all women who I think is having such a big impact, not only on the people she competes with, but the people she competes in front of, the people that see her for the first time, the people who follow her. And as far as a cross sport athlete, this hands down Willow Lyles. 2-time world champion now, powerlifting champion, had a super active year in terms of fighting. It seems strange to give it to a youth fighter, I know, but when I talk about who's representing the Carolinas to the best of their abilities, how could I not at least mention her? Leilani is about as active as it gets. She was obviously extremely successful this year, and was able to finish. And if she had not been picked on Seth's show, I would not. I'd be making a very different point right now. But now that I know Leilani has been picked by another judge, I can say safely that Willow. I think every time I see Willow compete in front of other people, they're inspired.
And I think she's racking up more sky miles than I am at this point, going over to all these places. So
yeah. I mean, her dad is the man. Willie. I say it every time I can because the parents. Sometimes when you're dealing with sports and you're people who are very successful in sports, and I certainly was a sports kid growing up, so I saw a lot of mat dads and a lot of 50-yard line dads and stuff. And Willie's he's just enabling Willow to do what she wants. He has no desire basically to be in front of the camera or to be part of it or to be in the way. He's just supporting her. And so to have a parent be so supportive of an athlete like that, and you see what she's able to accomplish with that little bit of support. Hopefully it inspires some other parents and other teams to like get behind a youth fighter and just see what can happen. You never know. You know, a youth fighter has a couple point fights. Next thing you know, you're in Greece fighting for a championship. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
Hey, Chaz,
Yes, sir.
piggybacking on what Dylan was saying about women not being a big category, your choices are limited. So, female pro, I went with Sasha Sullivan. I was there her last fight. I thought she won that fight, but she just didn't get the nod. But she looked good, and she'll be fighting soon in a couple of weeks, and I hope she next weekend, matter of fact, and I hope she can make the little adjustments. So she's my pro as far as the women goes, but my female champ is Leilani Hodgins Pike. She's fought mainly outside of the state, but you can find a few of those fights on YouTube. And she is a champion. She is a finisher. So she's looked good. I would just love to see her in a fight for it local show. Because if I have to go fight for it, women who have really shown out this year, I like Moriella Trinidad, from Carolina Combat Sports.
The only reason she's not been more successful is because they haven't been able to find her more fights. Like I think that's the only thing holding her back.
Right.
I didn't mention my pro. I forgot all about that. I'm going to bring it up right now. Speaking of, to continue off of what you're saying about women who have not fought on Fight For It, that I'd love to see on Fight For It, but also a woman who I think has just like not gotten the credit locally, maybe in her hometown, I think she has, or her like local scene. But as far as North Carolina, South Carolina as a whole, I don't think we've recognized her. So my pro fighter of the year, and certainly my champion of the year, is Anna Toole out of Charleston Muay Thai. She has become the Warriors Cup champion up in New York, and she has beaten some girls with some insane credentials in Muay Thai. And that Charleston Muay Thai team has been, a little, kind of back and forth with other athletes as other sports. Like, are they doing MMA? Are they not? Conflict MMA is always kind of like their home-based show, but now it's becoming more of this Warriors Cup show. From what I'm seeing, they're having more and more girls especially fight on there. And the two fights that I saw in Warriors Cup this year from Anna Toole were extremely, extremely impressive. And the people she's beaten, high level kickboxer. I'm not super well versed on Muay Thai, so I won't talk out of my ass in that regard, but I'll just say that I've watched a lot of striking, a lot of Muay Thai, and there's very few women in the East Coast area, United States area, that are as good as Anna Toole, who's still a teacher full time. And a multi-time world champion now in kickboxing. So, and multi-time world champion in Muay Thai. Sorry.
Don't get out of line in class. With Jacob Pius, the whole back and forth with D before that fight. How much do you like to see that type of stuff out of guys? Because it got pretty, to me, it got pretty nasty. And maybe it's because part of it, D was on my team, but also part that I'm 41 years old. You're an amateur fighter. I don't need to see all the nonsense that went with it. It was going to be a great fight in the first place.
Yeah, for sure.
Hyped up to a degree, to me, was awesome.
So
bad taste.
when we talk about what is too far in the trash talk, it definitely varies from guy to guy, and I think that Jacob is a lot smarter than people give him credit for. And I think he's a lot more calculating sometimes than people give him credit for. And I think he wants to seem more ignorant than he is in some scenarios. And I think this was one of those scenarios where he raised the bar, like really turned the volume knob up really hard. And he found out basically what happens. I'm not saying that like him, losing a fight was a direct result of him trash talking and not a direct result of how he trained for it or how he prepared for it. I'm just saying that, he took a pathway into a fight and he saw the results of that pathway into the fight. D, who is a guy who's normally not an easy fight for anyone by any means, definitely seemed like he had a little bit more fire in him. And for some guys that takes them out of their game, but it seemed like it did not take. And that tends to be the case as you fight better and better people, right? So like as you go on in your career, you start at 0-0, you start fighting guys that have also never fought before and have no idea what the fuck is going on. Then by the time you fought your fourth or fifth fight, you're in there with a guy like D, who's been competing in some kind of high level sport since he was like 10 years old. and isn't going to get phased by some dude talking shit about him. I mean, he'll get phased by it, but not in the way you're hoping. You know, there was never going to be a way for Jacob to overcome some of the differentials in that fight, and I see why he took that route. As far as like, do I like to see it from the guys? I do like to see anything that makes the fights feel a little bigger. I thought D selling the turtle shirts was very funny. Like that's kind of like the stuff that I think is like lighthearted and funny, especially like if both guys get in on it and like Jacob is wearing a shirt that D was selling somehow and he's like, where did he get that from? You know, like that kind of stuff is funny to me. So there were added elements to the fight because of that, and it made it feel bigger. And if you look at the results of what it rendered this insanely high view level fight, you know, like in terms of the largest view count ever in Fight Sport history. And if you take all the other videos on their channel, put them together, it doesn't get next to that video. So it's pretty crazy, I know, but all of that stuff kind of plays in to why he was my fighter of the year this year. It's just because he had more narrative surrounding him than anyone else.
And I'll say this almost like a sports broadcast aspect. Of course, you want to have more views come your way to spice things up. You know, the Super Bowl is always going to be the highest rated program on TV.
Yeah.
For decades. And it doesn't matter who's in the game, but if you have, you know, Kansas City versus, if you can make a storyline, a narrative out of anything in sports, that's going to happen. Like I said, it was going to be a good fight for me, but at like 41, 42 and being around MMA for past, ever since I moved to, since I moved to Charlotte, but the past 10, 15 years, I've never seen something be so personally directed at somebody, which,
I mean, dude,
and it turned, it's sort of, and I'll be, like I said, it turned me off to a degree. Like I said, I was always going to watch it because I had somebody invested in it, but it was also two good guys fighting too.
Yeah, it's a high level contest between two very different approaches. Like I said right before the fight started, will it be chaos or will it be control that dictates the fight? Like you have like somebody who embodies kind of, you know, the last of a dying breed, really. Like Jacob's one of the last guys we'll probably see that just came into this like just looking to fight.
Well,
you know, and I think at my age, 32, I don't want to see a kid his age get his arm broken in a fight. But at the end of the day, the story that it creates is so compelling that a movie writer couldn't have imagined that he would get picked up and slammed. And one of the most basic things we learn in all of martial arts, like your first day of your first class in your 101, he didn't learn because he skipped that and became a fighter. And he proved that he could fight, but in the process proved that he did not know martial art. It's like, it's just beautiful. It is like very, very beautiful to me. So like all that kind of factors in, and someone taking a devastating L of that magnitude and coming back and fighting like he did against Tyler.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say.